I mean, they are targeting, no one has been picking this up, they're targeting 215 companies, and they name it unashamedly nationwide, that have exceeded the 100,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent limit. And the Labor policy says, quote, the safeguard mechanism supported by National Reconstruction Fund financing is projected to deliver 213 million tonnes of carbon abatement between 2023 and 2030. That's page 23, by the way, of their policy. Now, this NRF is similar to the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, so $3 billion worth of funding will achieve 24 million tonnes of carbon abatement. Okay, terrific. But that leaves 189 million tonnes of emissions reduction to be achieved. Now, at the 2021 average cost of $40 for a carbon credit, that's a tax on business of $7.56 billion. I ask again, what is this if it's not a carbon tax?
Well, it is a carbon tax. Make no mistake about it. And this is typical Labor policy. Ultimately, they're obsessed with jobs in white-collar industries. There's no problem with jobs in white-collar industries. I want to see more of them. But they show no empathy for jobs in these blue-collar industries when it comes to their substantive policy. They simply don't care. They're trying to talk a big game about how they care, but their policies betray that.
But see, Joel Fitzgibbon...
This is the typical...
Joel Fitzgibbon has described the safeguard mechanism, this is a former Labor member, as, quote, a carbon constraint or a carbon tax or whatever you might like to call it. I mean, Joel Fitzgibbon, won't companies have to close or go overseas to cheaper jurisdictions?
Well, there's two types of businesses that are within that 213. Those who are trade exposed, that means they compete internationally with imports or they have to export, and those who are not. Now, Labor are very unclear as to whether the trade exposed industries are going to be excluded. You've got Chris Bowen saying that coal mines, for instance, will be included. They're going to pay the tax. And you've got Pat Conroy up there near the Hunter Valley saying they're going to be exempted. We don't know which. But I tell you what, if they have to pay the tax, those industries are going to be have a big cost imposed on them, which they can't afford because they have to compete. If they are exempted, we're all going to pay the cost in what we pay for our domestic goods, transport, airlines. They're the ones that will be hit hard. So one way or another, someone always has to pay for Labor's policy.
Quite. I mean, I'm saying...
Labor's trying to get away with this.
I'm saying Labor can't walk both sides of the street. Of the 215 companies, 210 are trade exposed. Coal mines, gas projects, steel makers, aluminium smelters. So if you give favourable, tailored treatment to trade exposed companies, you've got no climate change policy, no emissions reductions.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. What you do is you take an aluminium smelter, which is a very good example, so the Tomago aluminium smelter, it shuts because it can't compete because you've imposed extra costs on it, and then it goes to Western China where all the new smelters are being built, and guess how it's powered up? Coal. That's how they power smelters in Western China. So you've sent the emissions to China in an electricity grid that has higher emissions, by the way, than ours, and you've lost the jobs from Australia. That's where Labor always goes. We saw it when they were last.
They're going to squeeze. They're going to squeeze business on emissions, tighten them each year to meet this 43% in 8 years' time. I mean, China are cheering. This policy helps China create jobs at our expense. It forces companies that are responsible for a third of Australia's emissions to go net zero or pay huge amounts of money in carbon credits. Angus, this has got to cost jobs in industries where there is no substitutable emission-free technology.